Hello, I'm Holly, and it's time to talk about all the books that I read in May. May was an okay reading month for me. I ended up reading quite a few books in terms of the number of books, but not as many in terms of the number of pages because I read a lot of shorter books this month. Like last month, I'm going to start with my statistics and then I'm going to rank the books starting from my least favourite to my favourite of the month. In May, I read 10 books which worked out at 2,164 pages. This was an average of 70 pages per day or an average of 216 pages per book. Like I said, I read a lot of shorter books this month, and the average time on my own TBR was only 3 months this month. A lot of the books that I picked up I got straight from Scribd, so the month on my TBR was 0 because I look at the months that I have owned a book, and because a lot of these I don't own, it just meant that that statistic was a bit smaller than usual. In terms of star rating, I had 3 2.5 stars, 1 3 star, 2 3.5 stars and 4 4 stars. I had quite a mix this month. Some books that I really didn't like, some books that I really did. I still haven't had a 5-star yet, which is a bit sad. It's been months now. I think my last 5-star was in February, so hopefully I will have one in June. And my average star rating was 3.35. In format, I read 4 physical books, 4 ebooks and 2 audiobooks. In genre, I read 5 fantasy, 2 contemporary, 1 mystery, 1 historical fiction and 1 paranormal book. In demographic, I read 2 middle grades, 2 young adults and 6 adult books. In terms of where I sourced these books, 5 of them were from Scribd, 2 were from my TBR that predated 2022, 2 books I had bought in 2022 and then 1 was from the library. In terms of author status, 4 books were from authors that I hadn't read before and 6 were from authors that I had. And then looking at whether the books were part of series, 2 were standalones, 2 were starts of series and then 6 were continuing in a series. I'm quite happy with that figure. I do want to be continuing more series. I did start 2 series, but one of them I have already DNF'd because I didn't like the book. And talking about that, I think that we should just get into my ranking and reviews. My least favourite book of the month was The Westwood Witches by Sarah Northwood. I ended up rating this one at 2.5. It was very much on the cusp of being a 2-star. I have been doing half stars this year, but on Goodreads it is a 2-star. And this is a self-published novel. It's following this girl who's 17 and she finds out that her family might have magic and this causes issues. I think my main gripe with this book was that it was written incredibly young. Now I know that some YA is targeted towards a younger audience, but the fact that the main character was 17, that is a fact that is repeated multiple times, made the writing style feel so juvenile. Personally, I would say that if your main character is 17, you're leaning on the upper side of YA, but this almost read like a middle grade. There were a couple of scenes that were a little violent, and I think if they had just been toned down a bit, it could have been a middle grade, and that probably would have suited the story better because you're following this girl, she's finding out these things, and something that happened in this frustrated me so much because this is quite a short book, but it took over half the book for her to figure out she's a witch. As a reader, you know that she's a witch. The book is called The Westwood Witches, so you would expect that maybe it would take the first 50 pages for her to come to that realisation, but it takes over 100 pages for her to get to that point, and then all the training happens off page. What was the point? So she finds out she's a witch, and then there's a few paragraphs and it says over the next few weeks she learnt all this magic and she perfected all these skills, but we're not shown any of that. What was the point? I don't understand why the author would have made that decision to not show you the magic on the page. There are a few scenes where there is magic, her mother can shapeshift, and there are a few scenes where she does that, but I don't understand why the training, which I personally love reading about, I love seeing people coming to terms with their magic and slowly learning that, and that was lacking for me. I did like the focus on family though in this. There is a very supportive family that the main character is a part of. A lot of this book is looking at her relationship with her grandmother who passes away at the beginning of the book, and that starts her on this journey, and it's looking at that relationship. She has very loving parents, and I really thought that was very nice because a lot of young adult just cuts the parents out, but it also relied very heavily on tropes. There didn't seem to be any logic. The ending was very anticlimactic. There wasn't even a confrontation really with the villain, which, again, an interesting choice. It just didn't do it for me, and I'm not going to be continuing in this series. The next book is Death in White Pyjamas by John Bude, and I don't really have anything to say about this book. This was a book that was chosen for my local book club. The library randomly selects a book. We're forced to read it, and I don't think anyone in the group particularly loved this one. It's an old mystery, very much in the vein of Agatha Christie. There's this theatre troupe, one of them gets murdered, someone murdered them, and you're finding out who did it. But this one, it just didn't make any impact on me at all. I thought it was boring. I didn't care about the characters. It was very stereotyped, very misogynistic sometimes, and I just didn't really like this one. My third 2.5 star of the month was Across the Greengrass Fields by Seanan McGuire. This was quite a disappointing read for me. I'm really considering whether I should keep going in this series because the past few installments I just haven't enjoyed. I think my main issue in this series is the length of the books. So this is a novella series following these kids who go through magical doors into fantastical worlds, and some of the books are set in the magical worlds. This one was set in the Hooflands, which is a land full of horse-like creatures, centaurs and kelpies, that kind of thing. And some of the books are set in Eleanor West's School for Wayward Children, which is following children who have come out of their worlds and they're struggling to readjust. And I just don't feel invested in this series. I don't particularly care about the characters. There was some nice writing, some nice description, a lot of fairy tale-esque vibes in this one, which I did enjoy, but it just didn't really save the book for me, and the ending felt very anticlimactic. That seems to be a running theme. And yeah, I was just disappointed in this. I didn't really have many thoughts. It was okay to listen to. I listened to it as an audiobook. It was a quick audiobook, but it wasn't anything special for me. And let me know if I should continue. I know a lot of people love this series, but it just doesn't really work for me. Then I'm going to join these two entries together because this is Rat Queens Volume 1 and Rat Queens Volume 2 by Kurtis J. Wiebe. This is a graphic novel series following this group of women who kick ass, go on quests to defeat monsters, and I did prefer the third volume over the second one, but they are very much on par. I think I gave one of them 3 stars, one of them 3.5. And this series, again, it's just okay for me. I know a lot of people love this series, but I'm not fully invested yet, and that's a little bit worrying because I have heard that it goes downhill, so I don't know if I'm going to enjoy the later installments. But I will say that this book gives me what I expect it to give me. There's lots of fight scenes, there's bad language, there's violence and all that kind of thing, which you expect going into this series. It is very adult, very graphic. Don't go into it if you don't like blood and gore. And I did like the exploration of our main characters' backstories, which you get a lot more in these 2 installments, but it was okay. It's a bit jumbled, a bit chaotic, and it can be a little hard to follow at times. And I will continue in this series. They are very quick, fun reads, but nothing overly special for me. At number 5 on the list was Bluecrowne by Kate Milford. This is a middle grade fantasy set in the Greenglass World House. I'm not entirely sure on the reading order. This is the one that Goodreads said I had to read next, but Goodreads doesn't track all of the books in this series, so I'm not sure, but this one is quite a departure from the first 2 books. The first 2 books follow this boy who lives in this hotel called Greenglass House. They're very Christmassy books, and I read both of them at Christmas. That was perfect. I highly recommend those 2. But this one is very different. This is historical. You're following these 2 siblings who are moving into Greenglass House. I'm pretty sure it is Greenglass House, but it's not called that in this book. And And this one was also a lot more fantastical than the first two books. The first two books do have paranormal elements. I'm not going to tell you too much, I don't want to spoil them, but this one was full on fantasy. There were fantasy fights, there was flame, creatures. It was very exciting and I did really love that magic in this one. Something that Kate Milford really excels at is her family relationships and her friendships. They are so compelling and so well developed. I loved our two main characters, the siblings. They had such a good bond and they also had incredibly supportive parents. Again, that's something that I just really like to see in books. And I was very intrigued at the world in this one because it was more fantastical. It's really opening the world up and you can definitely see little hints of what is going to come in these books. I think that there are a few more sea books, which is part of this element of the overall Green Glass House series, and I will be picking up another one of them soon. So I did really enjoy this one. I'd highly recommend this series. It's very cute, very fun, very easy reading, and I really enjoyed that one. Then a completely different vibe is Learn My Lesson by Katie Robert. This is an erotic romance. It's the second book in the Wicked Villains series, which is a set of Disney villain retellings. It's very loosely based on Disney. It does kind of ruin your childhood because these are very steamy, very erotic, lots of sex scenes. Do know that going into this. It's pretty relentless. And this one follows Meg, Hades and Hercules. It's a throuple. There's some interesting relationships in this, power dynamics, and I really enjoyed this one. It was what it said it was going to be and I had a great time. I loved the characters in this one. I also liked the plot elements that were brought in the later half of the book. It was a little bit fast at the end, all these actiony things happening, but I liked it. Then in third position I have another graphic novel, and that was Blackbird by Sam Humphries and Jen Bartel. This follows this girl who has always believed that there is magic in this world, that there is this magical underground. There was this event when she was a child where she saw this magical creature, everyone else forgot about it but she remembered, and then she finds out that yes, magic is real and she might actually have magical powers, and she's exploring this world. This book was stunning. The art style is probably one of the best art styles that I have ever seen. I love the colour palette, I love the character design, I loved how magic was shown, and it just made for a really enjoyable reading experience. I did also like the story. There were some great reveals, some great twists, and there was lots of emotion all the way throughout. You're dealing with some harder topics. I think drug addiction is in this. There's death of family members, so do be aware of that going in. But I really enjoyed this one and I really hope that they bring out some more issues, some more volumes in this, because the last one was published in 2019 I believe, so it might have been it. But while it wrapped up very nicely, I would love to see more in this world. I think it really set up well to have more volumes and hopefully that comes at some point. These last two reads were both incredible in my opinion. They were 4-star reads, they weren't 5 stars, but I did really enjoy them and it was very hard to rank which one was going to be my favourite. But in second place we have Three Keys by Kelly Yang. This is a middle grade following this girl who lives in this motel. She is a Chinese immigrant and immigration and culture play huge themes in this series. This was the second book in the series and I will definitely be continuing in this series. I really enjoy it, and I will say don't let this cute cover lull you into a false sense of security, because yes, there are fun moments and hopeful moments, but there are also incredibly emotional and hard-hitting moments. This one in particular was looking at undocumented immigrants and the laws that were being passed in the 90s. So it's looking at this thing called Proposition 187, which was this law that would essentially stop undocumented immigrants being able to go to school and accessing healthcare and stuff like that. And it's very much looking at that in detail. One of the main characters' friends is an undocumented immigrant and she's really struggling. One of her parents is arrested, one of them goes to a funeral in Mexico and then is struggling to get back, and it's really hard to read at times, but I also think it's incredibly important for kids to read this and see their own experiences shown, and also for other children to see other perspectives as well. And something that I really appreciated in this is that the ending is not completely happy, that it's not wrapped up in a bow and it's like everything was fine, that actually there were repercussions and that there still are things going on in the world that are unfair. And it also had some other messages that I think were great for kids, like speaking up if you see something wrong, trusting in yourself, going for your dreams. It just has so many great messages and I would highly recommend this series. If you love middle grade or you know someone in that age range and you want to recommend a book to them, I would definitely recommend this series. And then last but certainly not least, we have How to Pronounce Knife by Suvankan Thamavongsa. This was my favourite book of the month, and this is a collection of short stories. All of these short stories centre the Lao experience, the immigrant experience, the refugee experience, and I really, really enjoyed this. I'll just tell you the names of my favourite stories. So one of them was called Slingshot, and that was about an older woman, I think in her 70s, 80s, falling in love with a younger man. I really enjoyed that one. I also really enjoyed Mani Pedi. That was about a man who starts working in a nail salon. And then there was also one called You Are So Embarrassing, and that was about a mother-daughter relationship on the rocks. And this was just really impactful. The writing style isn't usually something that I love because it's very simplistic, very stripped back, and there isn't huge amounts of description. It's just these impactful lines that go straight into you. And usually I like a bit more lyricism, but I think that the writing style really suited what the author was trying to do and trying to convey these points, these messages. And I will say that sometimes the messages went a bit over my head. Sometimes it was a little bit too clever for me, but I did really enjoy what I understood. I also really enjoyed the culture in this, the Lao culture, and the discussions of language, the importance of language. I really loved the exploration of relationships, familial relationships, romantic relationships. There were some really interesting and complex dynamics, and I would highly recommend this. I haven't heard too many people talk about it, but if you love short stories, this is definitely one that I would recommend. But that's it for my May wrap up. I read some good books, some not so good books. Let me know if you had any 5-star reads in May. I'm still chasing the 5-star. Hopefully June will be the month. But yeah, even though I didn't have any 5 stars, I did have some great reads this month, and that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and to everyone out there, stay curious. Bye!